We do three things. We do our ministry through life coaching, conversations,
Yes.
and community development or community transformation.
Yes.
So the coaching is the life coaching. So no,
Right.
I don't coach a football team or anything like that. But
That's all right.
life coaching, I'm a certified professional life coach, and I oftentimes partner or collaborate with other life coaches to help people, to move them, whether in the religious Christian setting or non-Christian setting, to help move people from, dreams and goals to actually taking steps towards achieving them. So
Right.
life coaching really helps people to kind of get unstuck.
Yes.
And then we do conversations like what I'm having with you. This is a
Right.
big part of ministry, is conversing with people, even people who disagree with you, even people who do. I don't see Jesus going around hitting people over the head,
Right, right.
with the scroll.
Right, right.
I see him engaging people in conversations and bringing meaning and purpose to their lives. And I think we do that, and we do that in a respectful way,
Right.
through things like this, shows like this. Community events where we bring people together. And then there's community transformation. We do a lot of missions work.
Right.
We have been to Uganda, South Africa,
nice.
Kenya, taking the good news, not just the speaking and the preaching, which I do, but also the distribution of food and clothes and
that's nice.
feeding the hungry and that kind of a thing. So
there's a lot of satisfaction, I'm sure, in your
oh
work.
my goodness, I am so fulfilled. I was saying that ministry really fulfills me because it's all of life. It's not to me just standing up with a robe on and speaking. For me, it entails all of my life, and even the struggles of my own life becomes opportunities for ministry.
Right, and there was on YouTube, there's where you minister.
Yeah.
If you look it up, you talk about destiny. So give me your
Yes.
couple points of reaching a person's potential for destiny, reaching their destiny.
Yes, I believe every human being is created for a purpose. And I think once we understand that we're not here just taking up space on the planet, that everyone has a purpose.
Right.
But
But let me ask you a question.
Okay.
So because a lot of people feel like they've reached their destiny if they're successful. It's like, how do you
Right.
turn this?
Exactly.
We're a very ego-driven world where it's like it's got to be
absolutely
right?
And so the whole misunderstanding really is that success, and usually we look at success as financial.
right. Or business,
And history proves, don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are a lot of happy, rich people, or wealthy people, or people who are successful. But history unfortunately proves that wealth, fame, does not give people fulfillment.
Right.
It has been proven. What really gives people fulfillment is finding what they're placed on this planet to do.
Right.
And to be. And sometimes people find that mostly they find that in relationships. My understanding, as I know it as a believer, as a Christian, is that we find that purpose and that meaning by first, our original design is first to be in relationship with God. We see in the Garden of Eden, we see this story, whether you believe it to be true or not, but we see what we see. Some people think it's symbolic, but we see a God who comes down to the garden to say, I want a fellowship, I want to have communion, relationship with you. And then he says, okay, now he creates a woman for the man, and so now relationships with each other. So we are to be in relationship with God and each other. That's where we find our fulfillment. But then there's also work that he gives them to do as a part of the original. But this is really pleasurable work, not the work that we know, like, oh my gosh. The work kind of came after the curse.
Right.
That
heavy,
part of, that heavy labor.
Yes.
But they were having fun doing work. So work is a part of our fulfillment, but it must not define us.
Right.
Once the work defines us, because what was really interesting when we first came to the United States, one of the first questions people asked us when they first met us was, what do you do? We thought that was a strange question. It sounds normal. It's normal for Americans. Now I understand it.
Yes.
But people seem to assess your sense of worth by what you do.
Right.
I think what you do is important, but it's not all of you.
Right. Right.
Who you are, your character, your nature, that is really where your destiny lies.
Oh, I see.
And we are created to be in the image of God, to have his nature. So finding God is a way of finding our true selves. And then we are to be in relationships with each other. So that's the kind of order of priority.
Yes.
And then work.
Right.
And work then takes on a whole different kind of meaning and destiny.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But if we're just working to be successful so I can be better than you, Krystyne,
Right.
then I've totally lost my sense of destiny and
I
purpose.
see. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for that outline.
I hope I didn't sound like I was preaching to you.
No. But again, I could sit here and you could just keep talking, and it's great. So let's get to Second Wind.
Yes.
So Second Wind is the book you authored. So we're sitting with a reverend and an author. It's very exciting.
Thank you. I'm honored.
Okay, good. So tell me about the book, the idea. And
Yes.
let me tell you, I read an excerpt of it, and I was blown away by the
Krystyne.
story of your brother. And I don't.
Yes.
You
Oh,
want to
absolutely.
share that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us where it came about.
Second Wind really came out of my own experience. So it's a compilation of stories of people finding God, finding Christ in the midst of their struggle and their suffering. The whole metaphor Second Wind is very well known to athletes. They explain it. Sometimes medical science explains it differently. Some say that runners or people who are under heavy exhaustion will search inside of their body, so to speak. The body will search inside for oxygen. And they will be able to find this second wind to be able to kind of push forward and go to the goal and to the finish line. Psychologists explain this differently, that human beings have this capacity, this sort of mind over matter capacity, that when faced with the extreme pressure, that they're able to triumph against the odds. And I believe that is well true.
Yes.
But I believe it's more than a medical or psychological explanation. It's more a spiritual principle that God has put within human beings, the ability to overcome adversity, because we have stories. I mean, I'm not talking about someone necessarily of faith. I'm talking about human beings have that God-given, whether they recognize it or not, potential in them to be able to, like someone could survive sub-zero temperatures for an extended period of time. Why? Well, some people say it's just luck. I believe it's the God in them, the image of God in them that has given them that power to be able to do that.
Right.
And so Second Wind talks about when we are in relationship with God through Jesus Christ, that he literally empowers us to be able to overcome.
So there are many different stories.
So many different stories. My own, and as you mentioned, my story with my brother.
Yes.
And it was a crisis of faith, because I am of the belief that God is a God of miracles.
And didn't you pray before, just
Yes,
to
I
start? You were at a church altar.
Yes.
And tell the audience.
Yes, I went to Christian college, and you believe that God can do anything, and you have this kind of wide-eyed kind of faith. And so I remember a missionary coming to chapel service and talked about how she'd gone through all these life-threatening experiences and came out good and all of that. And she made an altar call and had us come down there to recommit ourselves to Christ. And I remember going down there, crying and all of that, and like, oh my God, look at this woman. If I go through anything she went through, I'd probably not serve you in this way, God. And I remember the word of God saying, God's voice said, yes, you would, because it wouldn't be your strength. It would be my strength in you. And those words would come back to me when a few days later, my mother would call and say, your brother is in a coma. She didn't say he was in a coma. She said he was unconscious. She was trying to break it to me.
Right.
But I knew
That's a mother.
I
That's
know.
a mom.
She was trying to, she's like, no, don't worry.
Yeah.
He's unconscious. We're praying. He'll be okay. But I'm like, I'm coming home.
Right.
I knew there was an urgency about the situation. Get home, and there are tubes hooked up to my brother, deep, and he is sunken even deeper in a coma. And I remember the question, and it was an angry question I had before God, and I was mad and very upset. I was like, you can't take my brother. He's only 22 years old. What are you doing?
Right.
And he has so much to live for. And we going back and forth, and God saying, well, what if I do take him? Will you still serve me? But no, you can't.
I want my answer.
I want
gotta be mine.
Yes, it's got to be mine. I want it right now. You got to do that. You have the power to do it. I've seen you do it before. You need to do it. And God saying to me a third time, but what if I do take him? Will you still serve me? And I heard myself repeat the words that he had rehearsed with me the days before.
Yes.
Yes, I would serve you, because it wouldn't be my strength. It would be your strength. And he would take my brother and give me, I'm telling you, I'm saying this really quickly, but it was devastating, to say the least. It was a crisis of faith.
Yes.
But I was given a faith, a new kind of faith, that trusted God, not in the good gifts that I received from him, but in God himself, the giver himself.
Right.
Because so much of
well, a lot of people, right,
is about getting what we want.
Well, that's the thing too, because I've heard, you know, in different ministries that, oh, if you pray and if everyone gets right, you can be healed.
Right, exactly.
So why sometimes others can't? That's a question. That's
right. It's a question. It's an age-old question. But I found the answer in God Himself. In other words, I didn't find the answer like, okay, so this is what you do and this is what happens. It's saying, I submit, I surrender to you. You're God, I'm not. I'm not going to try to put you in a box and say, if I do X and X and X, you're obligated to do X and X and X. That's legalism. And a lot of Christians are stuck, or people of faith are stuck in that. If I pray this amount of times a day, if I do this amount of time, then God's obligated me to give me whatever I want.
No.
You know, and life doesn't really work that way. Don't get me wrong, I found God, the miraculous God, who does give me what I want. So it's this tension. You know, but it has to do with my submission to Him.
Okay. Wow.
And letting Him, His desires become my own.
Right.
So
and I'm sure it's just deepened your faith.
It deepened my faith. At the time, it felt like it was pulling me away, but it actually deepened me to find the God. I was upset with Him. I was angry. Right. I was hurt. I couldn't believe He could do this, and He would do this to me. I'm like,
What's so wonderful about having faith is that it is something that you lean on, even though you can't see it. It's something that I have found myself.
Absolutely, Krystyne, because I remember a friend of mine, my coworker, here in Boston, and she was of Jewish heritage, but she wasn't a religious Jew. And I remember just her going through this tragedy of losing her mother her mother committed suicide.
Oh yeah,
And I remember her, she was always an amazing person. I just thought she was an amazing, respectful kind of human being and respectful of other people's beliefs and things like that. But I remember her saying, Marion, I wish I had something to hold on to right now. I'm sort of angry with my mom for not giving me something. And I'm not bashing any particular religion. I hope you're not hearing it. But she was just saying that I didn't get anything. And so now that she's gone and gone in this way, I have nothing to hold on to. And I do believe that, the faith that we have.
So were you able to minister to her
Yes, I was able to,
faith?
Absolutely. I took this opportunity, not to beat her over the head with the Bible, but to say, here is the hope. Here is how, I have come to live my life. I'm not saying that in believing in Jesus or believing in Christ, immunes me from the struggles of life.
Right.
But in this place, I find hope and peace and joy. Those are things that are intangible that I can't buy.
Right.
I can't even get in a book.
Right.
I can find it only in God Himself.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, on our show,
yes.
on every guest, I ask this question. I encourage those out watching us tonight to come on the program, because I know and you know that everyone has a story to share. Or how would you encourage someone who's maybe intimidated about trying something new or wants to explore or try a new talent? How would you encourage them?
I will encourage you by saying that there is the God image in you, that there is something of God in you, that you don't have to just stay and say, well, this is what life has handed me, so I'm just going to stay here. I think about this story in the Bible, which is about the 10 lepers. And they wanted to go in and get some goods, but the enemy had all the goods. And so they needed to go into this campground and get the goods. But they had things against them, their infirmity and then their enemy. But they thought to themselves, if we stay here, we're going to die of our sickness. If we go in, we could die by this enemy. But you know what? There are goods in there.
Right.
And so you have to kind of weigh your options and say, you know what? If I stay here, I will die. But if I go in, I could probably achieve my dream. I could probably make a difference. I could probably affect a life in a positive way if I take that step. I think there are unfortunately, a lot of casualties in life of people who, if they had just taken that first step, could have actually achieved the dream, could have actually...
Well, that's funny you say that, because I had a friend that was nervous about going to college. And I said, you know what, sometimes, and it was out of town, and you're always nervous when you're going to school. And I said, sometimes you just take that step outside of your own.
Yes.
Because we all get stuck
in, we want to be safe, we want to be secure, and that kind of a thing. And sometimes really finding the real stuff of life, the real meaning of life, takes a risk, so to speak. Takes a step of faith.
Yes.
To plunge into the unknown, you know. I mean, the people who have affected and made a difference in the world are people who were willing to risk their lives for others, for the sake of others.
Right.
When you talk about change agents and on any arena or in any culture, every culture has a culture of, there are people who made bold steps.
Right.
To make a difference, you know, in that particular society. So it takes a level of courage and boldness to not stay in what is comfortable and familiar.
Oh,
I think
wow.
that would be the first